Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the Trump jet touches down in Aberdeen as the President's family begins arriving in Scotland. US diplomatic advice says Americans in Scotland should keep a low profile because of protests and demos planned here tomorrow.
Protests, there might be protests, but I believe that the people in the UK, Scotland, Ireland, I think that those people, they like me a lot.
We're live in Aberdeen and London with the latest on the President's visit. Also in the programme, many children go to school hungry, with some parents unable to afford uniforms, according to a group of MSPs. After Croatia's win against England in the World Cup semis, we ask how a population smaller than Scotland manages to do so well at football. And we're live from Gullen, where many of golf's best players are arriving to warm up for the Open at Carnoustie next week. Good evening. The US President Donald Trump has arrived in the UK. He says he's fine about any protests, saying Britons like him a lot. He'll travel to Scotland tomorrow for a private visit. Our reporter Rebecca Curran reports from Aberdeenshire, where friends of the President have already arrived with his son, Eric Trump.
Fresh from a round of golf at the family's many-estate course, the President's son has high hopes for his father's UK visit. He seemed relaxed about protests planned up and down the country.
Listen, there's always going to be protests, there's always going to be unhappy people, right? And there's also lots of happy people. You walk into this clubhouse and you see nothing but love and joy, and people who love the family and love the President of the United States. And listen, you're always going to have people on the opposite side of that. And so I'm sure you'll get a little bit of that. Most of the time you guys overhype it. By leaps and bounds, you say there's thousands and thousands of people when you have 4 people and a lot of press, but we'll see how it goes.
The Trump private jet touched down at Aberdeen Airport this morning. The family has been coming to the northeast for more than a decade. President Trump announced plans for what he said would be the world's greatest golf course at the Many Estate in 2006.
This was cut by God, and he was the best golf course architect of them all.
But at what cost? Years on, and there are fresh fears the heralded sand dune system could lose its special status. There were significant environmental concerns raised about this course on the Many Estate, and now Scottish Natural Heritage has claimed it's partially destroyed the specially protected site it was built on. This long-term opponent of Donald Trump, who previously attempted to kick the course into the long grass, isn't surprised.
I have to say this represents a catastrophic error of judgment by the Scottish Government. The decision to grant planning permission, which I didn't think was justified, was based upon claimed enormous economic benefits and employment. Those have not materialised. Mr. Trump has had planning permission for nearly 10 years. He has not built a golf resort. I should make it clear, I didn't think that the economic benefits, as claimed, justified the destruction of the site of special scientific interest, full stop.
As speculation heats up on exactly what President Trump will do with his weekend north of the border, security is tight at the course where his love affair with Scotland began. Rebecca Curran, Reporting Scotland, Aberdeen.
Protests against President Trump are planned, with large crowds expected in Glasgow, Edinburgh and Dundee. The US consulate in Edinburgh has urged Americans to keep a low profile. Stephen Godden reports on preparations for the President's visit to Scotland.
His inflatable likeness won't take to the skies around Turnberry, but as protesters were working out where in Scotland to fly their baby blimp, President Trump took time to consider the reception that awaits him.
There might be protests, but I believe that the people in the UK, Scotland, Ireland, as you know, I have property in Ireland, I have property all over. I think that those people, they like me a lot.
Outside the US consulate in Edinburgh, things were less relaxed.
During his 2-day visit to Scotland, Donald Trump isn't expected to be within 80 miles of here. But on Saturday, thousands of people will march past the end of this road to protest against the US President. With similar events planned in Glasgow and in Dundee, the consulate are urging American citizens to, in their words, keep a low profile.
The official advice posted on the consulate website also calls for Americans to exercise caution if unexpectedly in the vicinity of large gatherings that may become violent.
I appreciate the fact that they issued the warning. I'm not sure I would follow it, or I would probably
be nervous.
I would be more cautious.
So it's something that we are aware of. We talked about it as a family, we read about it, and to be quite honest, I'm glad we won't be here Saturday.
No, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm fine with everything.
But the Americans who are helping drive another summer surge in tourism needn't worry, according to the man in charge of policing.
Absolutely not. I would expect American tourists and others to be able to go about their business safely across Scotland this weekend, whether it's Edinburgh or anywhere else. I absolutely expect the protest to be a peaceful one, to be a lawful one. Yes, to be noisy and to have their voices heard, of course, which is their legitimate right.
The Edinburgh protest will be the largest in Scotland, with estimates of up to 10,000 people taking part. The organisers aren't taking the advice from the US consulate at face value.
I think the US Embassy are just afraid of all the people that Americans are going to join these protests with us. You know, they don't want it actually on the news that so many thousands of people, Americans, don't support Trump.
With Donald Trump now on UK soil, the consulate couldn't be reached for interview. Whether it's blimps or biscuits, there are those determined to express their feelings about the President's imminent arrival in Scotland. Stephen Godden reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Our political correspondent David Porter joins us now from outside the American ambassador's residence where President Trump is staying during his visit to London. And Rebecca Curran is still at the Trump golf course in Aberdeenshire. First, David, if I can come to you first, he's barely got himself here and he's embroiled in a row over Brexit.
Indeed, Donald Trump is not the type of politician who will resort to the time-honoured phrase of no comment on any type of issue. He has a view on most issues, and he gave that on Brexit today, wading into the difficult waters of that subject. When he was in Brussels talking to reporters, he gave the indication that he didn't think Brexit was perhaps going the way that people had anticipated, and he said that he thought that the UK government's latest plans may not necessarily have been the ones that people voted for. That will not have gone down well in Downing Street with Theresa May, and maybe they will discuss it in passing this evening when she holds a gala dinner for him at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, the birthplace of one of his heroes, Winston Churchill. Tomorrow she will have further talks with him at Chequers, her country residence, and then he will move on to Windsor Castle to have tea with the Queen before he flies up to you in Scotland, where he will be met at Prestwick Airport by the Scottish Secretary David Mundell.
Thanks very much, David. And Rebecca, what are the chances that we'll see the President at Many as well as at Turnberry?
Well, that remains to be seen. As we've heard, preparations are well underway for the visit of the US President. But where is he going to go? When I asked his son Eric Trump today, he said he'll spend 2 nights in Turnberry. As we've heard, he'll arrive there tomorrow. I asked him, can we expect to see him here at his Many estate golf course, and he answered, I hope so. We'll see. If he does, it'll be last minute. And that really is quite extraordinary. Less than 24 hours until the US President arrives on Scottish soil, and no one, not even his family, seems to know where he's going to spend his time, and that has huge repercussions for Police Scotland when you think about the security that is required. And earlier this week, the Justice Minister asked for further clarity on that in order to let them make their preparations. But Donald Trump is often described as the unpredictable president. When it comes to his Scottish visit, that seems it might be the case.
Rebecca Curran and David Porter there in London, thank you both very much. The Scottish Government says a Brexit blueprint published by UK ministers offers little reassurance and falls short of what's needed. A white paper outlining what the UK Government wants from Brexit was published this afternoon. The Scottish Secretary David Mundell says people should support the plan. Here's our political correspondent Nick Eardley.
It feels like we've been browsing for a long time, the UK Government considering its Brexit options. But in the business world, many are desperate for clarity. People like Joe Chidley, who runs Glasgow-based Beauty Kitchen.
Within the cosmetics industry, it's a regulated industry that's regulated by the EU, and I don't know what those changes are going to be. And when those changes do happen, I will then have to redesign all of my labels on my product to facilitate that change. I want to understand as a business owner what the impact is going to be, not just for an EU trade deal, but an international trade deal, so that I can make the provisions, both from a cost impact perspective, but also from a staffing perspective.
2 years in the making, but MPs had to wait until the very last minute. Look closely, the white paper is being distributed after the debate had started. Commons was suspended so we could all have a read. So what does the UK government want? We would keep the same rules on goods. There would be a new arrangement on services. Freedom of movement would end, though it's not clear exactly what would replace it. And ministers say the plan would protect the union. So here it is, 750 days on from the referendum. Finally, a plan. Theresa May says this is practical and principled, but many in her own party disagree. There's huge opposition to it in Parliament, and some think this has little chance of ever becoming reality.
I do want people to rally round. I understand that people won't all agree. People have very strong views on the Brexit issue, but we do need to reach an agreed position.
Many, though, strongly disagree.
Well, we have to study this paper fully. It doesn't satisfy our needs. We certainly want to make sure that the arguments are continuing to be put about single market membership and customs union membership.
When you look at the history of this process so far, with the way that devolution's been handled and the way that the discussions over the customs union have been handled, it's been totally ridiculous. And when we see that there's no majority in Parliament for the proposal that the government's brought forward, that will be tested soon enough.
The political rows continue to frustrate many, and for Joe, a decision on the future should have come sooner.
So, I'm really surprised by the lack of reassurance from the British government. You would think that we could make decisions quickly, effectively and efficiently for something that we have voted to happen. So it surprises me that I've not had much information.
Nick Eardley reporting Scotland, Westminster.
The GMB Scotland Union has described what it calls the effective closure of the BIFAB yards in Fife and Lewis as a dark day for the Scottish economy. It says a number of redundancies were confirmed this morning, leaving just 7 staff being offered part-time positions in the next week or so to oversee maintenance and security at the 3 yards. The new Canadian owners, DF Barnes, say they're working tirelessly to secure new contracts for BIFAB. Children going to school hungry and parents struggling to pay for uniforms. MSPs on Holyrood's Education Committee have been investigating the links between poverty and attainment. One recommendation is that schools simplify uniforms to make them more affordable. Katie Hunter reports.
Cheese ball, an apple.
Preventing holiday hunger in Glasgow's East End. This summer camp aims to keep young people active. But every child here receives a free lunch, regardless of their circumstances.
They talk about Glasgow being a deprived city and certain parts of it. But what I've found is it applies just about everywhere in Glasgow. There's kids going hungry and it frustrates the life out of me.
Holyrood's Education Committee heard poverty was a growing issue for children. MSPs were also told increased use of digital platforms had a disproportionate impact on children in poverty. And the committee heard concerns about the cost of school uniforms.
When people are donating things, they always think about tiny children, they always think about small children, 4 and 5 year olds.
Sandra Douglas set up a uniform bank in East Renfrewshire 3 years ago. It works like a food bank, but provides families with school uniforms.
I think people imagine that this is all people that are out of work. It's not. You've got the working poor, as they say. They're just not paid enough. And you've just said it, they either pay for lighting and heating and the rent or food on the table or a uniform.
The Scottish Government says it's spending £750 million ensuring every child has an equal chance to succeed. The UK Government says it's offering parents tailored support to move into work. But politicians on all sides say there's more to do.
cost of uniform, digital literacy and exclusion through that were all huge problems. But when we've got children who are turning up each morning unable to learn because they haven't been fed, that is outrageous in one of the most wealthy countries on this planet.
Back at summer camp, these youngsters have all been well fed.
Want cheese on your pasta?
The same can't be said for all of Scotland's children. Katie Hunter, reporting Scotland.
You're watching BBC Reporting Scotland. It's coming up to 6:45. A reminder of tonight's top story. As members of the Trump family arrive in Aberdeen, US diplomatic advice to Americans here is to keep a low profile due to planned protests. And still to come, Croatia are through to the World Cup final. How does a population smaller than Scotland produce such good footballers? Hill farmers who've been struggling to feed livestock and grow fodder in the dry conditions are warning that this week's rain isn't enough to ease their problems. After weeks without significant rainfall, the lack of grass has also left some unable to make enough silage for winter. Jackie O'Brien has been to the north coast of Sutherland, where one farmer may have to reduce her stock to cope.
Armadale hill farmer Joyce Campbell checks over her sheep, concerned that the recent dry spell has taken its toll on her flock.
I'm checking to see, are they growing? So I weighed some of these lambs today when they've been in and checking to see how they're actually performing, because they should be up about 30 kilos just now if we're going to sell them in a month's time at 35 kilos. That's been slightly suppressed with the lack of grass. I'm standing in my silage park, which should be ready to be cut right now. But the problem is it's just not grown with the dry weather.
The dry conditions mean Joyce may also have to reduce her cattle herd by a third because she's unable to produce enough silage to feed them over winter.
I've never had to consider doing this before, so it's quite a big step, but it's just the economics and it's just about balancing what you have, and it's just going to be short across the country. So it's my best option is to just sell some off.
Well, this is the first rainfall this area has seen for weeks, but it's still only drizzle. And for many farmers, it's just too little, too late. With no significant rain falling or forecast, farmers are still having to transport water to their animals.
It's just a pressure on the whole industry just now, but it's just something that we just deal with and adapt to what's coming our way.
After weathering a long, cold winter, farmers are now having to face up to an even more challenging summer. Jackie O'Brien reporting Scotland, Sutherland.
Scottish football needs to learn from Croatia if we're serious about improving. That's according to a former chief executive of the SFA. The comments follow Croatia's 2-1 win over England, which saw them progress to the World Cup final. As our neighbours think about heading home, we are once again looking on in wonder. Here's our senior football reporter, Chris McLaughlin.
Begs a very obvious question. How do they do it and why can't we? We have a bigger population. Football is our national sport. The last time Scotland reached the World Cup finals, Croatia finished in the semi-finals. What do they know that we don't?
I think sometimes that people, will study Germany and study all these big countries, but probably countries like Scotland and whatnot maybe need to look at what the likes of Croatia are working, because with their population and the success relatively that they've had, it's been phenomenal, really.
Part of Yugoslavia until 1991, this young nation was forged from the flames of the Balkans War. Star player Luka Modric was a child refugee of that conflict. His grandfather murdered, his family displaced.
When you look at the personal stories that Croats can identify with, these are all the stories of, again, people who had so many difficulties in life and who achieved everything through devotion and hard work. So these are the people who had nothing to do with politics.
Here at the National Stadium, the Scottish FA have been looking at reforms aimed at on-field success. Fans, though, want results now.
They might want to go to Croatia now and look and see how they're developing players, exactly what it is they've got that brings players through to this level.
Passion, belief, talent mixed with a strong national identity, the ingredients for success. Look and learn. Chris McLaughlin, reporting Scotland.
The Scottish Open golf is underway at Gullane, and among the front runners is American Ricky Fowler, who's trying to win this event for the second time. Our reporter Kenny Crawford is there to tell us more about the first day's action. Kenny.
Thanks very much, Sally. Yes, top level golf has come home to Scotland for the next fortnight. Scottish Open this week at Gullane, and then the Open Championship itself at Carnoustie. Next week you might be able to see Darren Clark, a former European Ryder Cup captain, practising on the range over my shoulder. Today, it's fair to say the weather this week has been kind to the golfers. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, flat cam at Gullane. Today, a little bit more of a breeze to give the course a little bit of defence, but not enough for the likes of Ricky Fowler, the American who won here at this very course, the Scottish Open in 2015. He went round in 64 to leave him 6 under at a course that he's grown to love.
For me, I feel like it's right in front of you. Yeah, there's blind tee shots as far as you can't see the ball land, but I feel like here at Gullane they do a good job of the bunkers or something that you can see that helps frame the hole. So you always have some sort of reference. It's not like you're hitting over a hill and completely blind.
And Ricky Fowler was one of a group of people on 6 under in first place, but they've dropped back to second now. Another American, Luke List, who's just finishing off his first round, is now 7 under. Top Scot is not exactly a household name in the shape of Peter Whiteford from Kirkcaldy. He shot 65, really good 65, to leave him 5 under, and even better considering he's been struggling with injury recently.
Both hips are kind of old man hips already, so that's why I stopped playing in the first place. It's not just the rounds of golf; it's the practice in between, and it became too painful. So I've not been playing a lot, but maybe that's the way forward. I don't know what I'm doing in my life.
So what he's doing with his life just now looks just fine, because he's sitting 2 back off the lead as Peter Whiteford, and if he was to win this event, he'd pocket £900,000. Not bad work if you can get it. Other Scots doing well, Richie Ramsey and last week's Irish Open winner Russell Knox, both on 4 under. But that's all for now here from Gullane. Sally.
Kenny, thank you very much indeed. Kenny Crawford there. As we've been saying, President Trump's expected to spend time in Scotland this weekend, and the betting is that he'll set some time aside for a game of golf. If he takes to the greens at what's now Trump Turnberry, he'll follow in the footsteps of another American president who picked Ayrshire as the place to relax. Almost 60 years ago, Dwight Eisenhower was the last serving American president to take the sea air and very much be seen on the Ayrshire coast. Aileen Clark has been delving into the archives.
And now, from Prestwick Airport, the President arrived in the familiar open Rolls-Royce USA 1.
1959, and President Dwight Eisenhower arrives at Culzean Castle to take advantage of the holiday apartment gifted to him by the 5th Marquis of Ailsa as a thank you at the end of the Second World War.
He was the Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in Europe, which included a lot of Scots, so he was held in great esteem here and considered to be a hero, leading us to victory during the Second World War.
For the 4 days the President stayed here at Culzean, crowds turned out here and indeed everywhere else he went. This was an opportunity people in Ayrshire were not going to miss. Peter Lockhart from Ayr was a red-haired 5-year-old back then, taken to the castle by his parents, all keen for a glimpse of the US President.
He broke away and he walked over and he asked me my name and my age and where I was from and what school I was, and then he patted me on the head and then walked away.
Wow, what was that like?
It was a big wow.
Turnberry Golf Club the President was bent on visiting, having announced his intention of doing so almost as soon as he arrived in London.
Golf featured in that presidential trip to Ayrshire too. Eisenhower, though, just an honoured guest at Turnberry rather than owner. Jackie Wilson, aged 10, got herself right into the middle of this photo of Ike Eisenhower on one of his trips to the area when he visited Maybole.
We were all really excited. We all ran to see him and obviously trying to get in at the front.
Did you ever think you would see somebody like that in Maybole?
No.
In his trip in 1959, the President and First Lady attended the local church at Kirkoswald.
Here, Mr. Eisenhower joined with the children and village people.
When President Eisenhower came, he decided that he didn't want to be up in the gallery, but he wanted to sit in amongst the people. Here we have Dwight Eisenhower, 6th of September 1959. So it's a lovely memory to have of a very memorable visit.
And you would be quite happy for any other president to add their name to that list, should they be passing any time soon?
There's space. There's space in our visitors book and there's space in our congregation for a warm welcome. Yeah.
Aileen Clark, reporting Scotland, Ayrshire.
Well, let's see what the weather is likely to offer all those who take to the greens this weekend.
It should be quite good, actually. Thank you very much, Sally. Indeed, I'd put money on saying the weather is going to stay largely settled over the coming few days. Today it was fairly cloudy, but it did see some breaks in the cloud. It was a brightness to the cloud and pretty pleasant across much of Scotland. Into this evening, we'll still see 1 or 2 showers down towards the southwest. They'll largely die away tonight, and some bits and pieces of rain or drizzle for the Southern Highlands and towards Tayside, southern Aberdeenshire, and that may continue on and off during the overnight period. Elsewhere, fairly cloudy, a few clear spells here and there, and certainly not cold, and in fact it might feel that bit humid, 12 to 14 Celsius. A predominantly cloudy start to the day tomorrow. However, that cloud does thin and break, particularly across northern Scotland. And as we head through the day, we'll see some showers pushing into the southwest, but a pretty fine day for the Northern Isles tomorrow. Light winds, highs of 16, maybe 17 Celsius, maybe more in the way of cloud coming into Shetland. Plenty of sunshine for northern Aberdeenshire, for the northwest. A bit more in the way of cloud for more inland parts of the Southern Highlands, certainly, but sunny for the borders. And those sharp showers continue to affect Dumfries and Galloway, pushing in towards maybe the Glasgow area as we head towards the end of the afternoon. Highs of 22 Celsius tomorrow. It will feel warm, I think warm generally everywhere with those light winds. Good sunny spells for the northwest and indeed the Western Isles. And into the late afternoon and early evening, those showers continuing for a while. There's enough energy to keep them going in the south, but they ease overnight, dry for most overnight with some clear spells as well. And it will be a warm night as well. Pleasant night, good night for a barbecue. So the high pressure that's really been driving our weather will stay with us right through the weekend. But these weather fronts here introducing some rain to the west and more in the way of cloud generally as we head through the weekend. But the high really is going to be the dominating force. So a sunny start for southern and eastern parts on Saturday. Cloud increasing from the northwest. The rain will stay focused across Argyll in towards the northwest Highlands, extending across northern Scotland. But pretty warm everywhere. Highs of 23 or 24 Celsius. That's your forecast.
Thanks so much, Judith. Now, a reminder of tonight's main news. President Trump has arrived for his first UK visit since taking office, as thousands plan to protest his policies. This evening, he's dining with the Prime Minister at Blenheim Palace. He travels to Scotland tomorrow. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'll be back with the late bulletin just after the 10 o'clock news. Until then, from everyone in the team right across the country, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.